YouTube. In case you didn't know, I am a certified high school English and history teacher in the province of Ontario in Canada. And I'd like to kind of talk today about the curriculum, specifically the secondary school English curriculum, and kind of what it means for teachers and students, and to just basically kind of clear some things up, because I've been hearing a lot of misconceptions about what teachers should and should not do. And basically the curriculum tells us that. So basically, I'm just going to start off by telling you what the curriculum doesn't do. So first of all, the curriculum doesn't dictate which materials we choose. The works that we choose are basically the selection of the teacher, the head of the department, and the school or the school board if it's a Catholic school, which may be a little more stringent on the selection of texts. And we are told right in the curriculum that we need to teach diversely, that we need to choose materials that reflect the culture of our students, and to pick texts that actually are Canadian texts, that are not just, you know, Anglo-Canadian texts, but texts from First Nations or texts from immigrants. You know, kind of, you want to reflect the classroom, and you want to incorporate Canadian culture in there as well. And this diversity not only applies to culture, but also to the types of texts that we choose. So we're not just talking about fictional novels. It could be short stories, poetries, plays, non-fiction books, manuals, articles, graphic novels, you know, because it all incorporates reading, right? Secondly, the curriculum does not provide us with teaching methods. The curriculum is not a book of lesson plans. It is up to the teacher to construct lesson plans, to construct units, to construct assignments. So it doesn't say in the curriculum you have to give a test, you have to teach in this way. It's really a lot basically up to the teacher. For me, for my expectation, I expect classrooms to be probably like 30% teacher directed and 70% student engagement in activities and learning, because you learn a lot more by engaging and by actually doing things. You learn a lot by moving around and using your hands and everything and engaging kinetically with things than you do just by sitting there and listening to a teacher. So that's basically what the curriculum doesn't do. So this is what the curriculum does do. The first thing that we see in the curriculum are 7 principles, and these are kind of the ideals that we want our students to reach. These are the underlying principles. So first of all, we want students to understand that language learning is necessary, it's life-enhancing, and it's a reflective process. Secondly, we want students to communicate effectively and with confidence. We want them to read, listen, view, write, speak, and represent. Thirdly, we want students to make meaningful connections between themselves and what they encounter, not just in texts, but in the world around them. Most importantly, I think, is number 4. It should be number 1, and that's we want students to think critically. Number 5, we want students to understand, recognize, question, assess, and evaluate points of view. Number 6, we want students to appreciate the cultural impact and aesthetic power of texts, which I think is very important, that aesthetic power. And number 7, the last one, we want students to use language to interact and connect with individuals and communities for personal growth and for them as citizens of the world. So then we have standards, and there's 4 of them, and this is kind of like what you teach, kind of. So the first standard is oral communication. This is not just listening, but we want the students to talk as well. We want students to listen to understand, speak to communicate, and reflect on their skills and strategies. Then we teach reading and literature studies. which is understanding the complexity of reading, what it involves and what it affects. We want to expand intellectual capacity, and we want the students to read for meaning, understand form and style, read with fluency, and reflect on their skills and strategies. Then we have the third one, which is writing. We want students to be able to express themselves, apply conventions such as grammar, spelling, and usage, which are very important. We want them to develop and organize content. We want them to use knowledge of form and style. We want them to apply the knowledge of conventions. And we want them to reflect on their skills and strategies. I think you can see a pattern here. We want students to do a lot of reflecting because that's how you grow as a person, is you look back at what you did and see what was effective and what wasn't effective and what to use again next time and what not to use again next time. Yeah, and then lastly, this may surprise some people, media studies is a huge part of the English curriculum. We want students to apply critical thinking to any form of media, be it text, graphic, video, music, etc., etc. We want them to understand the media, we want them to understand the forms, we want them to understand the conventions, techniques, and the creation of media text, so we want them to actually create, and we want them to reflect on their skills and strategies, right? And then each of those standards is then broken down into 3 to 8 more specific expectations, depending on the grade and level of the course, and I'd be here all day if I went through all of those, so I'm not going to. And it's then up to the teacher to incorporate what certain specific expectations they want to include in that, say, lesson plan or that assignment or that unit. And we're supposed to use all of them by the end of the year, of course. Yes, and then we assess students because, you know, there's always grades involved in school. So we assess students in 4 areas. The first is knowledge and understanding, which is subject-specific content. This is the kind of memorization aspect. Not really, but that's kind of the most relevant thing I can think of. And you want to comprehend its meaning. The second area we assess students in is thinking. This is the planning and the processing, and then the applying of critical and creative thinking, which I think is very, very important. The third area is communication. So we want to see that the students have the ability to convey the meaning. And lastly is application, which is taking all those things from before and actually using them. And assessment can take many different forms. We have formative assessment, which is assessment without a grade. And so this is kind of essential because it shows the student how they're progressing without kind of, you know, having them worry about grades. And so that when they finally get their final grade, that it's not a surprise. This is kind of, you know, building towards it. They're not necessarily always done by the teacher. They can be a self-assessment. How do you feel you did on that? What do you feel you could do better? What do you feel worked well? It could be a peer assessment. For example, we do that a lot when we use grammar and spelling. You know, get the student to mark it off themselves. It's less work for you. It helps the students, and you know that you don't really know something until you can teach it, and that really, you know, helps with learning, right? Because then you expect the students to teach their peers. And then there is teacher assessment in there, but it's not, you know, here's an A, here's a B kind of thing. It's kind of going around and making mental notes and talking to the students, saying, oh, you know, why don't you try doing it this way, or you know, like, hey, see that student struggling, I have to do something differently, or the whole class is struggling, you know, I have to reflect on my own skills there and kind of say, okay, well then, you know, let's revisit this again, because I can't expect the students to continue progressing if they don't get one of the steps in the progression. You know, it's kind of silly to kind of keep pushing forward and expecting students to keep up when they aren't. And I think that's a big failure on the part of the teacher, not on the students. And the other form of assessment is called summative assessment. This is an actual grade. So this is kind of like, we call it a culminating activity. So it's kind of at the end of each unit is, you know, when you have that project. It could be an essay, it could be a presentation, it could be art-based, it could be a debate, it could be a test. Ugh, I hate giving tests in English. I think it's totally wrong, but, you know, and yeah, so just to give you an example of a summative assessment, so here we have our different assessment areas. We have knowledge and understanding, application, thinking, and communication here, and then we assess by levels. So an R is a fail. And we lay out clearly what we expect students to do in each section. And we want them to aim for this level 4, which is about like an 82 to 100% in regards to grades. And we lay out clearly what we want the students to do. So that it's not a surprise. We've been working with them to get to this level 4, and most students should be level 3, which is average, you know, 70 to 80%, and level 4, 80% and above. So yeah, that's a rubric. That's what you should be seeing in class when you get an assignment. This is what you get, and this is the most important piece of that. So I don't want to continue going on about how lessons are constructed. I will do that in a separate video. But I decided to get out there, just kind of explain what the curriculum does and what its implications are for literature and students and teachers and schools and the world as a whole, because we are sending these students out into the world, aren't we? So let me know your ideas on the curriculum, how you feel your teachers did or didn't conform to the curriculum idea. And I'd like to hear from other teachers if you know how you go about the curriculum from other places besides Ontario. And thank you for watching, and take care.